Jake is next. Jake is in Illinois. Hi, Jake. How are you?
Hey, good to be speaking with you, Dave.
You too. What's up?
So my question is, what do we do with the net revenue of our business? To give you a little background, my family owns and operates a couple grain elevators in this area. Dad owns the lion's share of the business. I have some aunts and uncles that own a minority share along with myself.
Okay. So your dad's in control.
Yeah.
So you're going to be advising him with what I tell you.
Yes.
Okay. And how much net profit is there?
So that just depends on the year. Last year we were about $100,000 net. The year before we were about $400,000. We typically range between $350,000 and $450,000 over the last 5 years.
Last year sucked then, huh?
Yeah, grain market inverted, and it's hard to make money as a grain elevator when the market flips like that. So we were just happy to be above zero.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay. And so does the profit number, have you already calculated before you get to that profit number some reinvestment back into the business for growing the business or replacing equipment or anything like that? Is that all built into this, or do we need to set money aside for those things before we talk about the rest of it?
So I think my dad would say we do. I would argue we don't, having actually run the equipment every day. And, you know, our newest truck is a 2000 and our newest skid steer is a 95. And we're getting to the end of the life of things, and we just don't seem to be replacing, because that's where my head is on this, is to reinvest back. But I just don't know the balance of, I mean, you spoke a lot about the risk we take and how much we should be taking home and all that. I just don't know what to do here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, we have to keep the business operating, and the equipment is not there for prestige. So I really don't care what the year is. I care about the functionality and the life left in it. And so if whatever the least expensive equipment that will get the job done is the equipment I want to use, because everything else is just showing off. I'm not trying to show off with my skid steer, for God's sakes.
Right.
So I just want a skid steer that does the job. And so now if if the thing's old and it's worn out and it's laying down more than it's standing up, then, we got a problem because we can't get our work done. Now we got a business function that's blowing up because of a piece of equipment. So the balance is not to always keep new shiny equipment that everybody's impressed with, but to keep the minimum equipment on board that will continue to get the job done. Getting the job done means a level of reliability and a level of sophistication of the equipment. And so, in our world, our skid steers are computers. And so let me tell you about computers. The day you take them out of the box, they're already obsolete.
Yes.
And so we're constantly we have a line item in our expenses for constant technology upgrades. And it's not because we want the newest or the fanciest, or we give a flip about what someone thinks about our computer. We just are in the broadcast and computer and network digital world, and we've got to have stuff that gets the job done. And so we're constantly reinvesting into that. So all of that to say, you and your dad need to sit down and go, okay, what about this whole truck? Are we going to take it out? You really need a systematic line item. It says every 5 years we're going to buy a truck, every 8 years we're going to buy a skid steer, or whatever it is. And so you take the cost of a skid steer, divide it by 8, if that's the number. And if 8 years is the number, put that in the line item, and you start setting aside what we call a sinking fund, a retained earnings, to systematically replace equipment on a schedule. And you do that in real estate with a roof. A roof only has so many years of life, as an example. And so we do that with equipment. With me, with a computer, it's about a year. Dadgum thing's just useless. Stupid iPhone, the same thing, right? And the differences in what a new one will do versus one 5 years ago will do are astronomical. So it's mandatory to go there. So anyway, all of that to say, now then we've got net profit. And then the only thing you've got to keep net profit for past that is for cash flow fluctuations in case you have a year that goes negative, or for growth. We have the opportunity to buy out another granary. We have the opportunity to add another whatever it is, silo that gives you volume, right? Or whatever it is. I don't know how that your world works, but I'm making stuff up. But you follow me. How are we gonna grow the business? Okay, we need $100,000 to grow the business, to add this whole thingy over here. And so we got to ascertain what that thing costs and how we're going to get there. And all of that gets done within reason before we start taking a bunch of money home. And then we take it home.
Okay.
But I talked to a guy the other day. He's running a 5th generation family business with a bunch of cousins he's the CEO, and the cousins are all, and the uncles and aunts and whatever, 3rd, 4th cousins, however it works, 5 generations in, right? They're all stakeholders like your aunt and you and that kind of thing. And he said they're in a very high growth business that is requiring heavy reinvestment, and they've not paid a dividend to the stakeholders in 5 years. In other words, 100% of their profits have been rolled back into growing the business and upgrading equipment and moving on. So that's a possible scenario for you and your relatives, that there's not any distribution. There's not a requirement morally or ethically. What's the thing we have to do is keep the goose that is laying the golden eggs, the business, we have to keep it healthy. That's the primary. After that, then we start distributing to stakeholders and aunts and uncles and minority shareholders and that kind of stuff. But we're going to do what's right for the business. And now I'll tell you this also, the flip side of that is eventually you need to start taking some money out of the thing, or there's no point in running it. If all it does is eat money, then there's no point in running it. Now we're running a hobby. It's not really profitable. So at some point, the investment needs to turn and create return so that, so that there is a distribution. So 5 years and not getting a distribution means that but he thinks he's putting money in the bank with that guy. He thinks he's putting money in the bank. There's going to be dividends that pay. The stuff he's doing now is going to pay big in the following 5 years. So that guy, that CEO, that other CEO I was talking about. So yes, let's replace systematically line item in the budget, replace equipment, and no, there's not an ethical requirement for profit distributions, but it is the reason we want to own a business, is to create profit distributions. So at the end of the day, that has to happen too. So there's this balance, this dance that we go in between the two. And so these days around Ramsey, we're at the point that we have heavy profit distributions, even though we have heavy reinvestment. But, the size of the business and the amount of money is different than it was in the old days when we were scratching and clawing a little bit more than we are today. This is the EntreLeadership Podcast.